Hi. Nice to be back. As you can see, my research is on, as a title, a case study investigation of special needs inclusion policy implementation in 3 Abu Dhabi public schools. So I am particularly, the main theme is to do with inclusion in education. Education has been pushed a lot in the UAE as a new nation, and one of the main themes that they have aligned to the rest of the world is talking about inclusion. Inclusion is a hot topic of international debate in Europe, in America, across the world, and the UAE has joined that debate. So my introduction and the main theme is inclusive education, as I've just said, and the UAE has aligned with the rest of the world because there has been a lot of conferences, a lot of meetings and conventions focusing on inclusive education. What is inclusive education and how do we promote that? To give you a definition of it, inclusive education is all about getting every child to be able to access education, irrespective of their disability or differences, whether in age, in nationality, gender, whatever their differences are, a child should be given the opportunity to have equal access to education. So that's what inclusion is all about. And the UAE decided to buy into this propaganda, this vision, and which came from the Salamanca. So I've got over there. The Salamanca Convention of 1994 was one very big conference, as well as the UN's Convention on the Rights of Persons. These were one of the big conferences that were held around the world where they wanted to promote the whole idea of inclusion. The UAE bought into that. And because they did that, the federal law in 2006 adopted the Salamanca Convention and the UN rights of persons with disabilities. So they bought into that, and that became law in the UAE, that every child has to be given equal education opportunities. ADEC, where the focus of my study is, ADEC stands for Abu Dhabi Education Council. They responded to the UAE law by creating the Special Needs Education Handbook, as well as the School for All initiative. And it aligned completely with Federal Law 29, that all children in the UAE, irrespective of their differences, have a right to equitable education. Okay? So if we move forward, the purpose of my work is to assess the school's execution of this ADEC policy. So I will be focusing on the policy. What does the policy say? And how are the ADEC schools, specifically 3 primary schools in Abu Dhabi, how are they responding in developing inclusive policies and practices within the school? So all the children, disabled children, children with disabilities, can access curriculum in mainstream. They will no longer be put aside in special schools, locked away. So that is the first purpose of my work. And then to identify, to identify positive, inclusive practices that is already happening in the schools in 4 main areas. So I will be looking at the curriculum, accessibility, assessment, and teacher development. How do these 4 areas promote UAE government, Abu Dhabi's vision of an inclusive school? Okay, so my literature review is going to particularly focus on that. What is the rationale? Why am I doing it? And I'm doing it because I'm passionate about special needs teaching. I believe, coming from the background of an SEN teacher and a SENCO, a Special Educational Needs Coordinator in the UK for many years, I believe in equality for all children, irrespective of the problems they have. So this policy is now in its 5th year since it was created by Abu Dhabi Education Council. So it gives reason for it. The study has never been done in Abu Dhabi. A study on inclusion had been done in Dubai, in one of the Dubai schools. But it has never actually been done in Abu Dhabi, which is like a separate entity within that emirate. So I'm going to critically look at how the policy is being used in its 5th year. This is the 5th year of it. Are they following the process? What are the procedures and processes in the schools and practices and what are the gaps to aid that? And because there is limited literature, the reasoning is that whatever is happening into the schools will add to the body of limited literature in the UAE as the rationale to cover the gap. The whole idea of inclusion, as I said, is a hot one. And the theoretical framework, the main ones that work around inclusion, there are three. The medical model, the social model, and the organizational model. Now, the medical model, I just quickly wrote there that it's old-fashioned, it's all to do with separation, segregation, looking at the child as they have a medical problem, so they have to be put away. They have to be put in a separate school. So that is how the theories of inclusion started, and then it moved down to the social model, which is the most popular. Studies around the world have all focused on the social model of disability, where that model demands equal rights for the children. Appropriate resources should be given to the children, to teachers, to help them cope in mainstream classes. And it's all driven by differentiation. Teach a child to the level in which they are at. So that's what the main focus, no segregation with that model. Children with disabilities is beneficial for a child with a disability to work in the same classroom as a child without disability. There are great benefits for both sets of children. The organizational model is quite new. I didn't focus on it, and I won't talk much about it now because it doesn't have any impact on my work. So to keep moving on, the research methodology is a quantitative study because, why? Because quantitative case study, I am looking at human experience. What is happening in the schools? What is the understanding of school staff and ADEC staff about the policy and how they are implementing the policy? So it's all to do with in-depth interpretation of people's lived experience. That is why I chose a qualitative design. Now, the research question is, to what extent is ADEC's SEN policy implemented in practice? And what can be done to improve the implementation to support inclusive practices in 3 Abu Dhabi schools? So the research question led me naturally to have a design choice to use an evaluation tool which is internationally recognized to judge inclusion. So it's a very flexible, adaptable tool that has been translated in many languages, including Arabic, tested in 3 Arabic nations, how this index for inclusion breaks down how the different things that schools can self-reflect. Are they applying inclusion? Are they treating every child equally? Are they giving them equal access? And very important, to link it to the theoretical framework, the index for inclusion supports and adopts the social model of disability to include all the children in one school and keep them apart. Other instruments, because it's qualitative, I'm also going to have observations, semi-structured interviews, and document analysis. So looking at ADEC documents and school documentations about what inclusive education means, how to put into practice, okay? Purposeful sampling, obviously, the sampling has got to be purposive because we have to look for the phenomenon within the schools where we are likely to see it happening. So we have to be in the schools and be in close communication throughout my research with school staff because we have to observe the different things happening in the curriculum, on the playground, and in the school systems. So if we move on, limitations. It's confined to 3 schools only in Abu Dhabi. 3 primary schools, because it is always good when policy is being implemented to look at it from the bottom, how it is working. So 3 schools in the Emirates. The problem I have and still have at the moment is access. It takes a long time for Abu Dhabi Education Council to give you permissions to go into the schools, and I've been waiting for that for a month now, so I haven't started actively because they've assured me they will do it as I do work there, kind of. But I'm still waiting for approval. The sample size is small, so I'm going to look at specifically 10 teachers. I will be talking to 10 teachers who will be mainstream teachers or an SEN teachers. 15 students from grade 2 to grade 6 in cycle 1. I would be talking to 3 principals of the 3 schools, the head of SEN in ADEC. I would be interviewing him as well, so that all these, this sample, the participants will be, I will be able to get information from each one what their experience of living this policy is. Another limitation is that the School for All initiative has got 10 categories of disability. But I'm looking at only 9 categories. So the 10 categories, mental disability, intellectual disability, hearing problem, visual, up to 10. But I will be looking at 9 because I'm not looking at the gifted and talented, which is a category under special needs. But we are not looking at children who are gifted and talented, so that's a limitation. The setting is, excuse me, is just in primary school, and my data will come only for the 5 years, the last 5 years since the policy was adopted. The wider implications is that hopefully the findings will go to fill in the gap. Because conversations with teachers are showing that they are not very comfortable in applying the policy because they don't fully understand it. They are not they are not trained to teach some of the children with the disability. So hopefully best practice would be seen with the schools that have started applying the policy from day 1, identify any concerns, what is the school's capacity or incapacity to be able to deliver differentiated lessons to meet the needs of all those students. And hopefully the results would give recommendations how the policy can be best be applied to meet the rest of the world, as well as extend the literature of inclusion in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, and across the whole UAE to move the Every Child Matters, the School for All agenda forward. So that's the thrust of my work.